Brian O'Connor was one of the most important characters in the Fast and Furious franchise. He wasn't just a street racer. He wasn't just a former cop. Brian was the heart of the series. He was the bridge between two worlds, the law and family. And for millions of fans around the world, he became one of the most beloved characters in movie history. But then something happened. After Fast and Furious 6, Brian slowly disappeared from the franchise. New movies continued, dangerous missions became even bigger, and Dom's family kept growing. Yet one question remained in every fan's mind. Where is Brian O'Connor? Today, we are uncovering the real story behind Brian's disappearance, the heartbreaking tragedy that changed the franchise forever, and why the Fast family chose to honor a legend instead of saying goodbye forever. Chapter 1. The beginning of Brian O'Connor. Back in 2001, the first Fast and Furious movie introduced us to Brian O'Connor, an undercover police officer assigned to investigate illegal street racing in Los Angeles. At first, Brian was supposed to be the outsider. His mission was simple: gain Dominic Toretto's trust and bring him down. But things didn't go as planned. As Brian spent more time with Dom and his crew, he discovered something he had never experienced before: loyalty, friendship, and family. The line between right and wrong became blurred. Instead of arresting Dom, Brian made a life-changing decision. He let him escape. That single moment transformed Brian from a police officer into a member of the family. Fans connected with Brian because he felt human. Unlike many action heroes, he made mistakes. He struggled with difficult choices. He wasn't perfect. And that's exactly why audiences love him. Chapter 2. Brian becomes a fan favorite. As the franchise grew, Brian remained at the center of the story. In Too Fast, Too Furious, fans followed him to Miami. In Fast and Furious, he reunited with Dom. In Fast 5, he helped pull off one of the greatest heists in franchise history. And by Fast and Furious 6, Brian had become more than a racer. He was a husband, a father, and one of Dom's closest brothers. Throughout these movies, audiences watched Brian evolve from a young undercover cop into a mature family man. His chemistry with Dom created one of Hollywood's most iconic friendships. Whenever Brian and Dom shared the screen, fans knew they were watching something special. But behind the scenes, a tragedy was approaching that nobody could have predicted. Chapter 3. The heartbreaking loss of Paul Walker. On November 30th, 2013, the world received shocking news. Paul Walker, the actor who played Brian O'Connor, had passed away in a tragic car accident in California. He was only 40 years old. At the time, Furious 7 was still being filmed. The production immediately stopped. The cast, crew, and millions of fans around the world were devastated. For the Fast family, this wasn't just the loss of an actor. They had lost a friend, a brother, someone who had been part of their lives for more than a decade. Nobody knew how the movie could continue. Without Paul Walker, the future of Brian O'Connor seemed impossible. Chapter 4. The difficult decision. After months of discussion, the filmmakers faced a major question. Should they kill Brian O'Connor in the story? Or should they find another way? Eventually, they chose the option that felt most respectful. Instead of giving Brian a tragic ending, they decided to let him live. Using a combination of visual effects, existing footage, and performances from Paul's brothers, Caleb and Cody Walker, the filmmakers completed the remaining scenes. Their goal wasn't simply to finish a movie. Their goal was to honor Paul Walker's legacy. The team wanted audiences to leave the theater celebrating Brian's life rather than mourning another death. And that decision would create one of the most emotional endings in movie history. Chapter 5. Brian's retirement. Within the story, Brian's departure was explained in a simple but meaningful way. He retired. After years of danger, car chases, gunfights, and impossible missions, Brian chose his family. He stepped away from the action to focus on Mia and their children. For Brian, family had always been important. And after everything he experienced, retirement made perfect sense. While Dom and the team continued risking their lives, Brian finally got the peaceful life he deserved. This explanation allowed the character to remain alive in the Fast universe while respecting Paul Walker's memory. Chapter 6. The final drive. Then came the scene that changed everything. At the end of Furious 7, Dom watches Brian one last time. The two friends drive together. No words are needed. The audience already understands. These aren't just two characters saying goodbye. This is the franchise saying goodbye to Paul Walker. As the road splits into two directions, Brian drives away. Dom continues forward. For a few moments, time seems to stop. Fans around the world cried. Many still consider it the most emotional moment in Fast and Furious history. The scene wasn't about death. It was about remembrance. It was about friendship. And it was about letting go. Chapter 7, See You Again. The emotional impact became even stronger thanks to the song See You Again. Performed by Wiz Khalifa and Charlie Puth, the song became a global phenomenon. Its lyrics perfectly captured what fans were feeling. Loss, friendship, memories, hope. The song quickly became one of the biggest hits in the world. For millions of people, it wasn't just a movie soundtrack. It became a tribute to Paul Walker. Even years later, hearing those first notes instantly reminds fans of Brian O'Connor and their unforgettable farewell in Furious 7. Chapter 8, Why Brian is Still Mentioned. Many fans wonder why Brian continues to be mentioned in later movies. The answer is simple. Because he still exists in the story. Characters occasionally reference him. Sometimes they mention that he's taking care of the kids. Sometimes they imply he's spending time with Mia. The franchise wants audiences to know that Brian is still part of the family, even if he isn't appearing on screen. This approach keeps his presence alive without replacing Paul Walker. Chapter 9, Fan Theories About His Return. Over the years, countless theories have appeared online. Some fans believe Brian will return through digital technology. Others think old footage could be reused. Some rumors even claim that Brian secretly participated in later missions. But most of these theories remain speculation. The reality is that the filmmakers have always treated Paul Walker's legacy with great care. Any future appearance would need approval from his family and would have to respect everything Brian represents. For now, there is no confirmed full return of Brian O'Connor as a major active character. Chapter 10, The Real Reason Brian Disappeared. Many people ask if Brian's absence is a plot hole. The answer is no. The franchise didn't forget him. The writers didn't ignore him. Brian disappeared because the people behind Fast and Furious wanted to honor Paul Walker in the most respectful way possible. Killing Brian would have meant losing the character forever. Instead, they gave him the happy ending that Paul Walker never got in real life. Brian retired. He found peace. He stayed with his family. And in the Fast universe, he continues living that life. Brian O'Connor's story began as an undercover police officer trying to stop street races. It ended with him becoming part of something much bigger. Family. His journey inspired millions of fans around the world. And even though Paul Walker is no longer with us, his impact remains unforgettable. Every time fans watch the original movies, every time they hear See You Again, and every time they remember that final drive down the open road, Brian O'Connor lives on. Not because he appears in every new movie, but because legends never truly disappear. As Dom once said, it doesn't matter where you are, whether it's a quarter mile away or halfway across the world. You'll always be family. And that's why Brian O'Connor will always be part of Fast and Furious.